The day you stop chasing is the day they begin questioning everything, and that changes the entire game. Most people think they lose someone's respect because they weren't attractive enough, successful enough, or loving enough, but that's rarely the real reason. More often than not, respect disappears the moment you teach someone that they can lose nothing by taking you for granted. Think about that. Every time you tolerate being ignored, every time you send another message after being left on read, every time you cancel your own priorities just to be available, every time you keep proving your worth to someone who keeps questioning it, you unintentionally send one message: I'll still be here no matter how you treat me. And once someone believes that, the balance begins to shift. This isn't about blaming anyone, it's about understanding human nature. People naturally place more value on what has standards. Imagine walking into two different stores. One gives everything away for free, the other carefully protects the value of what it offers. Which one feels more valuable? Life works the same way. If your time, attention, loyalty, and energy are available, no matter how poorly you're treated, they slowly become expected instead of appreciated. That's why chasing never creates respect. It creates comfort. Comfort that you'll always return. Comfort that there are no consequences for disrespect. But here's where your comeback begins: the moment you stop feeding that pattern, not through anger, not through revenge, not through trying to teach someone a lesson, but by finally deciding that your peace matters more than their approval. That decision changes everything inside you. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind will tell you to explain yourself one more time, to ask why they changed, to convince them to see your value. But ask yourself honestly, if someone truly recognized your worth, would you have to convince them? Probably not. The truth is, people don't learn your value because you repeat it louder. They learn it by experiencing what life feels like when your energy is no longer available without respect. That starts with you. You stop answering every emotional impulse. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop making excuses for behavior that keeps hurting you. Instead, you begin making promises to yourself. You return to the gym. You focus on your career. You reconnect with your purpose. You spend time with people who genuinely appreciate your presence. Slowly, something remarkable begins to happen. The version of you that once begged for attention starts disappearing. In his place stands someone calmer, someone stronger. Someone who doesn't panic when silence appears, someone who understands that self respect is built through daily decisions, not emotional speeches. And here's the irony: the less obsessed you become with making someone value you, the more valuable you naturally become. Not because you're playing games, because confidence replaces desperation, discipline replaces emotional chaos, purpose replaces constant overthinking. That's when the entire dynamic changes. You no longer wake up asking, how do I make them choose me? You wake up asking, how do I become someone who never abandons himself again? That single question will transform every relationship you ever have. Because the moment you stop feeding another person's ego with endless chasing, you begin strengthening your own character. And once your self respect becomes stronger than your fear of losing someone, you've already taken the first step toward becoming impossible to take for granted. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: people rarely change their perspective while you're standing in front of them trying to convince them. The more you explain, the more you defend yourself, the more you chase after one last conversation, the less space they have to actually think. Imagine trying to see your own reflection while someone keeps shaking the water. You can't. Not because the reflection isn't there, but because the surface never becomes still enough. Human emotions work the same way. When there's constant texting, constant arguing, constant explaining, constant emotional reactions, the situation stays cloudy. No one has time to truly reflect. That's why your words often fail where your absence succeeds. Not because silence is magical, but because silence creates something your emotions never could: space. Space for reality to replace assumptions. Space for someone to experience what life actually feels like without your presence. Think about your own life. Have you ever missed someone only after they were no longer part of your daily routine? Not because they begged you to notice them, but because their absence quietly revealed the value they had always brought into your life. That's human nature. We often understand value most clearly when we experience its absence. Now, here's where most people make a mistake. The moment they pull back, they secretly expect immediate results. They count the hours, they count the days. Why hasn't she texted yet? Why hasn't she called? Without realizing it, they're still emotionally chasing. Their body stepped away, but their mind never did. Real detachment looks different. Real detachment means you stop measuring your progress by another person's actions. Instead, you measure it by your own growth. You begin filling your schedule with things that improve your future. You exercise, you learn, you build your career, you reconnect with old friends, you travel, you discover interests that had nothing to do with the relationship. Little by little, your world becomes bigger and something unexpected happens. The person who once believed you'd always be available starts realizing that life continued without them controlling your attention. That realization often creates questions they never had while you were constantly present. What changed? Why isn't he chasing anymore? Has he finally moved on? Did I misjudge him? Those questions can't be forced. No speech can create them. No emotional paragraph can manufacture genuine reflection. Reflection is personal. It happens in quiet moments. It happens when expectations are interrupted. It happens when certainty disappears. But here's the lesson you must never forget: your absence should never be a performance designed to make someone panic. If you're pretending to move on while checking your phone every 5 minutes, you haven't really stepped back. You're simply hiding your reaction. True emotional freedom begins when you genuinely stop trying to control someone else's thoughts. Because the greatest transformation isn't happening inside their mind, it's happening inside yours. Every day you stop chasing, every day you stop explaining, every day you stop seeking validation, you recover another piece of yourself. Your confidence slowly returns, your peace becomes stronger, your identity becomes clearer, and whether they eventually recognize your value or not, you'll already be living a life that no longer depends on their approval. That's when everything changes, because the moment your absence stops being about making them notice you and starts being about rebuilding yourself is the moment you become someone impossible to replace. When someone hurts you, your first instinct is often to make them feel what you felt. You want them to understand your pain. You want them to regret their choices. You want them to realize they made a mistake. Those feelings are human. But if you're not careful, they can quietly take control of your life. That's when people begin making decisions they later regret. They send angry messages. They post things online, hoping the other person will see them. They try to make someone jealous. They argue. They seek revenge. For a brief moment, those actions might feel satisfying, but ask yourself one question. After all the anger is gone, are you actually happier? Most of the time, the answer is no. Because revenge keeps your attention locked on the person you're trying to move beyond. You're still allowing them to occupy your thoughts. You're still giving them your emotional energy. And that means they still have influence over your life. Now imagine a different response. Imagine choosing not to fight every battle, not because you're weak, because you become wise enough to recognize which battles are worth your time. Picture an eagle soaring high above the mountains. It doesn't waste its strength chasing every crow that tries to annoy it. If it did, it would never reach the heights it was created for. Instead, it keeps climbing higher until the noise below can no longer reach it. That's emotional detachment. Not running away, not pretending nothing happened, simply refusing to let someone else's behavior determine the direction of your future. Real strength isn't found in winning arguments, it's found in mastering yourself. Every time you're tempted to send one more emotional message, pause every time you feel the urge to prove your worth. Pause every time anger tells you to react. Pause. That pause is where your future begins. Because within that single moment, you have a choice. You can feed your emotions or you can feed your growth. Think about all the energy people waste trying to control someone else's opinion. Now imagine redirecting that same energy into becoming stronger. You exercise when you feel like giving up. You read instead of overthinking. You work on your goals instead of replaying old conversations. You build financial stability. You improve your mindset. You strengthen your character. Week after week, those choices begin creating a completely different version of you. not someone pretending to be confident, someone who genuinely is. And here's what makes this transformation so powerful. When your happiness no longer depends on someone else's apology, you've taken your power back. When your peace no longer depends on receiving another text, you've taken your power back. When you no longer wake up hoping they'll finally validate your worth, you've taken your power back. That's what emotional freedom looks like. It's quiet, it doesn't need attention, it doesn't need revenge, it simply keeps moving forward. Ironically, people often notice your transformation only after you've stopped trying to make them notice, not because you changed for them, because you changed for yourself. And that's the difference between temporary confidence and lasting confidence. One depends on someone else's reaction, the other is built from your own decisions. So don't waste your future trying to punish your past. Invest every ounce of your energy into becoming someone whose peace, purpose, and self respect can no longer be shaken by another person's choices because the strongest response you'll ever make isn't revenge. It's becoming so emotionally free that you no longer need it. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize something painful. They've been accepting less than they deserve, not because they wanted to, but because they were afraid of losing someone, afraid of being alone, afraid that if they finally said enough, the relationship would end forever. So they stayed quiet. They ignored the disrespect. They accepted excuses. They convinced themselves that if they just loved a little harder, gave a little more, sacrificed a little longer, things would eventually change. But here's the difficult truth: people don't always treat you according to how much you love them. They often treat you according to what you repeatedly allow. Think about a fence around a beautiful home. The fence isn't there because the owner hates visitors. It's there because valuable things deserve protection. Your self respect works the same way. Boundaries aren't walls built to push people away, they're standards that show people how to remain in your life. Without boundaries, people begin assuming your forgiveness has no limit, your patience has no end, your availability is guaranteed. And over time, what began as kindness slowly turns into expectation. Then one day, something changes. Instead of immediately answering every message, you choose your peace. Instead of accepting another broken promise, you calmly step back. Instead of arguing to prove your worth, you simply stop participating in conversations that drain your energy. Notice something important. You aren't trying to punish anyone, you're protecting yourself. There's a huge difference. Healthy boundaries are never about controlling another person, they're about controlling what you allow into your own life. Imagine walking into a restaurant. If every customer shouted at the staff without consequence, eventually that behavior would become normal. But when standards exist, respect naturally follows. Relationships work the same way. The standards you live by quietly teach people how to treat you. If you constantly reward inconsistency with unlimited access to your time and attention, inconsistency becomes comfortable. If you reward respect with your presence and remove yourself from disrespect without drama, people begin understanding that your time has value. And the most powerful part, you don't have to announce your boundaries, you live them. You don't threaten to leave. You simply walk away from situations that repeatedly cost you your peace. At first, this feels uncomfortable, especially if you've spent years trying to keep everyone happy. You'll worry that people will misunderstand you, some probably will. Others may even accuse you of changing. They're right, you have changed. You're no longer willing to abandon yourself just to avoid disappointing someone else. That's growth. Because confidence isn't built by hearing compliments. Confidence is built every time you keep a promise to yourself. Every time you choose dignity over desperation. Every time you refuse to negotiate your values for temporary attention. Slowly, your life begins attracting healthier relationships, not because you've become perfect, because you've become clear, clear about what you'll accept, clear about what you'll no longer tolerate, clear about the kind of life you're building. And clarity is incredibly powerful. The people who genuinely respect you won't be offended by your standards. They'll appreciate them. The ones who only benefited from your lack of boundaries may pull away. Let them. Not every goodbye is a loss. Sometimes it's simply making room for people who value your presence without requiring you to sacrifice your self respect. That's when the greatest shift happens. You stop asking, how do I make someone value me? And you start asking, does this relationship deserve access to the person I'm becoming? That single question changes everything, because the moment you stop accepting less than you deserve, you quietly become someone whose respect can never again be taken for granted. For a long time, you may believe that the goal is to make someone finally see your worth. You imagine the day they'll call, the day they'll apologize, the day they'll admit they made a mistake. You think that moment will finally give you peace. But here's what life eventually teaches: if your confidence depends on someone else's realization, then your confidence is still in their hands. Real freedom begins the moment you stop waiting for validation and start building a life that validates itself. Think about a tree. A healthy tree doesn't spend its days worrying about who admires its shade. It simply keeps growing. Its roots sink deeper, its branches reach higher, its strength comes from what happens beneath the surface, not from the opinions of those walking by. Your life should become like that tree, deeply rooted in purpose, strong enough to withstand seasons of disappointment, focused on growth instead of approval. That's why your greatest investment should never be another person's changing emotions. It should be yourself. Imagine waking up every morning with a mission that excites you. Instead of reaching for your phone to check if someone finally replied, you lace up your shoes and train your body. Instead of replaying old conversations, you open a book that expands your mind. Instead of wondering who chose someone else, you build skills that open doors no one can close. Little by little, your days begin to look different. Your posture changes. Your confidence becomes natural instead of forced. You speak with more certainty because your life is no longer built around pleasing other people. People notice this kind of change, not because you announce it, because purpose has a presence. Someone driven by goals walks differently, they think differently, they carry themselves differently. And here's the beautiful part: when your life becomes full of purpose, validation quietly loses its importance. You no longer need someone to tell you you're enough. You know it through the promises you've kept to yourself, every workout completed, every goal achieved, every difficult day you survived without giving up, every time you chose discipline over distraction. Those moments become the foundation of real confidence. There will always be people who fail to recognize your value. Don't let that become your identity. Your identity should never be based on who walked away. It should be based on who you decided to become after they did. Some people spend years trying to rebuild a broken relationship. Far fewer spend that same time rebuilding themselves. Choose the second path, because when you become healthier, stronger, more disciplined, more emotionally mature, you don't just improve your dating life, you improve every part of your life. Your friendships become stronger. Your career grows, your decisions become wiser, your peace becomes harder to steal. And one day you'll look back at the person who once kept chasing approval and barely recognize him. Not because someone finally came back, but because you finally came back to yourself. That's the comeback that truly matters, because the strongest people aren't the ones who convince everyone to value them. They're the ones who build such a meaningful life that validation becomes a bonus instead of a necessity. And when that day comes, you'll understand something unforgettable. The greatest investment you ever made wasn't into someone else's opinion of you, it was into becoming the person you were always capable of being. As we come to the end of this journey, there's one truth I want you to carry with you long after these words fade away. The real victory was never about making someone value you. The real victory was learning to value yourself so deeply that you no longer needed anyone else's permission to feel worthy. Think about how many people spend years waiting for someone to change, waiting for an apology, waiting for a message, waiting for closure, waiting for proof that they mattered. Without realizing it, they put their entire future on hold for a moment that may never come. Life is too precious for that. Every day you spend waiting for someone else's decision is a day you could have spent becoming stronger, wiser, healthier, and more fulfilled. There comes a point when you have to stop asking, why didn't they choose me? And start asking a much more powerful question: am I choosing myself? Because that's where everything changes. Choosing yourself doesn't mean becoming selfish, it means refusing to abandon your dreams just because someone walked away. It means protecting your peace instead of protecting unhealthy attachments. It means understanding that your value existed long before someone entered your life, and it will continue long after they leave. Imagine standing in front of a mirror 5 years from now. What kind of person do you want looking back at you? Someone who spent those years chasing answers that never came, or someone who used those same years to build a stronger body, a sharper mind, a meaningful career, deeper friendships, and a life filled with purpose. That choice begins today. Every decision you make either strengthens your future or keeps you attached to your past. When you choose discipline over desperation, you move forward. When you choose growth over resentment, you move forward. When you choose peace over emotional chaos, you move forward. Those small decisions don't seem dramatic in the moment, but over time, they completely transform your life. And here's something remarkable: once you truly respect yourself, you stop trying to force people to recognize your worth. You don't need to argue, you don't need to convince, you don't need to compete for someone's attention. You simply become the kind of person who naturally attracts healthier relationships because your standards have changed. If someone genuinely values you, they'll meet you with honesty, effort, and respect. If they don't, you'll have the courage to let them go without losing yourself in the process. That's emotional freedom. It's not the absence of pain, it's the ability to keep moving with dignity despite it. Maybe one day they'll realize what they lost. Maybe they'll remember your loyalty, your patience, and your presence. Maybe they'll wish they had treated you differently. Or maybe that day never comes. By then, it won't matter nearly as much as it once did, because your happiness will no longer depend on someone else's awakening. It will come from the life you've built, the discipline you've developed, and the person you've become. You'll discover that the greatest comeback isn't watching someone regret losing you. It's looking in the mirror and realizing you no longer regret choosing yourself. That is the moment your confidence becomes unshakable. That is the moment your peace becomes permanent. That is the moment you stop chasing validation and start living with purpose. So walk forward with your head held high, protect your self respect, invest in your future, choose growth every single day, and never forget this: the moment you stop trying to make someone value you is the moment you finally became priceless in your own eyes.